Hello, welcome to another Purple Insider Extra. Matthew Coller here, along with Sam Ekstrom. And Sam, GM and coach search are ongoing, but Mark Wilf, the owner of the Minnesota Vikings, implied in an interview with the Vikings Entertainment that they have pretty much interviewed the first round of head coaches, which leads us to believe that the coaches that we've seen announced as potential candidates is the pool that they're going to be choosing from. Two things for you. Which candidate from the pool of candidates that they have already interviewed stands out to you the most? And also, are you surprised that they have not interviewed some of these other names that have gotten interviews elsewhere?
Yes. The Enemy, Leftwich. I think those were the two big ones that fans were sort of attached to. Neither got interviewed. Now, help me out here. The first name that came across the board was Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson did not get an interview. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. Yes. The Vikings never announced an interview with Doug Peterson, but it was reported initially that they would.
So that's curious. So there's another name that I think we were both cool with that did not get interviewed. So we're down to, for me, of the offensive coaches, and again, I'm team offense here. It's Kellen Moore, it's Kevin O'Connell, and who's the third one I'm forgetting? Was that it? Just two offensive-minded coaches?
That might be it.
Okay.
Well, it depends on how you view Raheem Morris, because Raheem Morris has a background in both.
Yeah. I think I would be on team Kellen Moore, but people obviously have their issues with him and how things went in the San Francisco game. I can get beyond that, but I think youth is still a thing. He hasn't been in as many systems, hasn't been around as long, but I would still go probably with Kellen Moore. I'm a little fonder of Jonathan Gannon than most. I think there were some issues in Philadelphia there, and that might need to be rectified. But he does have experience in a lot of different positions. He's been coaching for a long time. He's been with the Vikings before, and obviously, if they didn't think he was a potential coach, they wouldn't have interviewed him because they know about Jonathan Gannon. But I think Raheem Morris of the defensive-minded coaches stands out the most to me, with the endorsement he's received from his players. The way he got the Falcons to play for him last year in Atlanta was incredible. They beat the Vikings in his first game as head coach. So I think I'm probably on team Kellen Moore, number one. But then of the defensive-minded pool, Raheem Morris then would be number one for me.
And the fact that Raheem Morris was the passing game coordinator for the Falcons under Kyle Shanahan would be very attractive. We see where Kyle Shanahan is now, and that doesn't necessarily mean Raheem Morris's offense would do the same thing, but it means that he fully understands the concepts that are having so much success in the NFL, as we're seeing two similar offenses in the 49ers and the Rams play for the NFC Championship. And it's an offense that the Vikings used a lot, very similar offense, but I think not to the level that Kyle Shanahan has been able to take it. So there is that connection. And also, if you're looking for a head coach to be more of a main leader of the team and then sort of let people do their jobs, which I don't think was necessarily the case previously, then Raheem Morris would be more toward that because he has a background on both sides of the ball. It is shocking, I would say, that they have not interviewed more offensive candidates. Byron Leftwich, Brian Daboll, Doug Peterson. I couldn't tell you exactly why those people have not gotten interviews, because they've been getting interviews in a lot of other places. Byron Leftwich looks like he's the favorite for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Maybe that's sort of a thing that everybody knows, but I think the Bears also interviewed him. And Brian Daboll, what he's been able to do with Josh Allen is really the dream for any team, to find an offensive coordinator to pair with their highly talented young quarterback and then develop that quarterback over a couple of years to where you could be ahead with 13 seconds left in the divisional game and nearly have a chance on the back of your quarterback to go to the AFC Championship. So it is surprising. It seems
Nathaniel
like
Hackett.
Nathaniel Hackett. That's right. He was the very first one that they announced. So, and there are other names like, Kevin O'Connell that come from that similar offense, but we just don't know a lot about Kevin O'Connell because he's under Sean McVay. It's hard to say, how much was O'Connell, how much was McVay. I guess you could call them McConnell if you combine their two forces. But, Zach Taylor is playing this weekend as well, and Zach Taylor was in that same role with Los Angeles. The defensive names, I think if you're looking for more of someone who takes on a leadership role and tries to empower those people around him, then that makes some sense. But I think a coach like Todd Bowles, it really surprised me that they would have interest. Someone who's had a head coaching job before, has largely been a defensive coordinator for most of his career. It feels like they're not going to go in the direction that we all thought, which was to hire the exact opposite of Mike Zimmer and hire an offensive guru and try to find their next Andy Reid or Sean McVay.
Yeah, I mean, most of the leaks that you've seen have been along the lines of, Todd Bowles had a great interview. He's going to get a second look. Dan Quinn's a front runner. Jonathan Gannon impressed them. I mean, I haven't heard the same about Hackett, who I think is moving on for a second interview at Denver. He's probably further down the road with them. Haven't heard a lot of follow up on Moore or O'Connell. And all of that is pretty strange to me. And I have my reservations that the Vikings would go the defensive route. Certainly you can't, you don't discriminate against side of the ball, but I think that if you're trying to go get a Mike Tomlin, like if you're trying to fit that exact mold, somebody who's going to, lead your team to above 500 records for 15 years in a row and be that kind of leader, it's kind of a unicorn. Like it's kind of hard to say we want this person. I thought Mark Wilf was pretty clear that, they don't want any specific person. They're not really trying to fit a mold. And I think that's the right thing to say. But it does feel like they are trying to find like the next Mike Tomlin. And that concerns me if that's their mindset, regardless of what they've kind of said in the press conference right before the hiring process.
Yeah, I wouldn't ever want to say don't hire a defensive coach. Absolutely do not, even if he's your favorite coach ever. I mean, someone like D'Amico Ryans, who they interviewed, is a younger coach. He's under 40 years old. He played in the NFL, and he has had an incredible playoffs. If you talk about rising stars in the playoffs, the San Francisco defense with D'Amico Ryans has absolutely been there. The issue that you run into is if they plan on, and they're going to have to do this eventually, whether it's this year or down the road, if you plan on drafting a quarterback, what you don't want from that quarterback is to come in, have a good year, and then have to change offensive coordinators. And this could very much be the case in Buffalo, that they have gotten so much out of Josh Allen with Brian Daboll. And then now you're going to bring in somebody else if Brian Daboll gets another job, and then they have to learn a whole new system, and maybe it's not the same. I think with someone like Josh Allen's talent that he'll be able to overcome any issues there. But we even saw with the Los Angeles Chargers, they changed offenses, and there were times where their offense wasn't as impressive as we expected with Justin Herbert. So I think it's something that you do have to be concerned about, even if culture and leadership should always be at the very top of the list. The thing that they have in Los Angeles, where they change quarterbacks and they stay with the system and they still have this coach who can raise the level of everybody around them. I mean, that's what you're looking for. And I don't think it's any huge coincidence also that Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow have been able to do what they've been able to do so quickly in their rebuild after just 2 years ago being really bad. I mean, they were the worst team in the league and drafted number 1. And now Taylor and Burrow can be paired with that system for the foreseeable future. I think that the situation in New England even helped Tom Brady with Josh McDaniels there for so long, but that's the rarity. We've seen it here. Usually when a coach does really well as an offensive coordinator, he gets hired elsewhere. And if he doesn't do really well, he gets fired.
Yeah. I mean, if you find the right quarterback too, that person might be able to play with any kind of coordinator and be fine. But odds are you're not going to draft a top 5 quarterback right out of the gate. They're going to need someone to sort of hold their hand in those first couple of years. And if that person is moving on or not really in Minnesota for the long haul, that does concern me. And I think because you are pivoting, probably, we don't know this for sure, but pivoting to a younger quarterback, trying to find your next franchise guy, it's helpful to have somebody that you can pair with them for the long haul. That if you could have that 10-year partnership, that has to be the goal. And you look at what teams that are winning are generally doing in this league. That's kind of the system. So looking at what works and then so what the Vikings seem to be leaning toward doesn't entirely mesh with me.
Yeah, I agree that it's a little bit of a different direction than we expected to interview so many defensive coaches. And I think this is one thing that is a little bit difficult for us and for fans to put their finger on what the Wilfs think about things, because they don't talk publicly that often. And then when we spoke to Mark Wilf, there was a lot of references to they want collaborators and that they were going to cast a wide net. But aside from that, there wasn't much specifics on what they want. So how they view what they most need in this franchise may be different from what a lot of us view. But I think, as always, the most important thing will be how strong you build the roster, what you do at quarterback. If you're staying with Cousins, how you plan to get from point A, where you've been out of the playoffs the last 2 years, to point B, or how you plan to go forward. And as you said, generally, if it's a great quarterback, and this is where Mike Tomlin comes in, if it's a great quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger, then yes, you can overcome changing offensive coordinators and things like that. But it's just, I really thought that they were going to kind of flip a switch and say, let's be as modern as possible and let's go this entirely all-in type of offense direction, especially when your most valuable player is Justin Jefferson. So we'll see when we get a resolution on the head coaching situation. Of course, we will have reaction videos when that happens, and make sure you're listening to the Purple Insider podcast every single day with new guests on the show. So thank you, Sam, and thank you all for watching this Purple Insider Extra.